Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and today is our Game Week 1 National League review. I'm delighted to be joined by Ryan Deeney, of course, from NL Musings, making his debut on the podcast. Ryan, firstly, how are you doing?
Not too bad. It's not been a terrible Monday. I mean, as I've mentioned to you, the little one's playing up, but otherwise, all good.
Yes, so if I believe so, you're a Birmingham fan, but you've got kind of a connection with Solihull Moors overall. Is that kind of...
Yeah. So Birmingham City fan, obviously that's a family thing, and generations passed on and so on. Probably not long after the promotion to the National League, started going down Solihull Moors and going a bit more regularly. Got a season ticket at one point, but kind of had to go by the wayside with life changes and all the rest of it. And then from there, sort of started with COVID really, just finding something to do, and always had a bit of a eye for the National League and what's going on and so on. And picked up from there, and then sort of opportunities have come up of I'm the head researcher with Football Manager for the National League now, just try and keep an eye and keep up to date as much as I possibly can, which I don't always get the chance to post on Twitter and so on. So hopefully have a good chat about it today and see how this goes.
Yeah, so of course you mentioned Twitter. There's that the main place that people can, of course, find you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just still at NL Musings. And then I've got the blog as well, but I don't tends to be sort of bigger previews and reviews and so on rather than regular content really.
Brilliant. Right, so we're going to get straight into all the games. Please remember to like and subscribe, everyone. We'll be reacting to every single fixture, giving our personal thoughts on it. Of course, with the National League, we've got to be honest, we can't watch full games back. It's all based off highlights that we've seen, things we've seen on social media, just our own thoughts overall on how we're going to reflect on each game. So I think to start things off, we'll get it up on the screen here. Hopefully it goes to the right slide straight away that I want. And we can get on with the first fixture, which I do believe is going to be, it should actually be Altrincham versus Aldershot, which was quite an entertaining one, a high-scoring one from both clubs. Of course, it feels like more of the same from Aldershot this season in terms of them being the entertainers of the division and being the side that were involved in a lot of high-scoring games. Of course, it was another high-scoring game on the opening game week for themselves this season. Not the result they wanted. Of course, the kind of gifted, don't know if that's a strong word, but they kind of gave Altrincham an early 2-goal lead in this one.
Yeah, I said in my season preview, Aldershot, there's a part of me that really wants to get behind them, but for the last 2 seasons now, they've conceded 83 goals in each season. And when you're looking at the available options in the defence, and I mean, you've brought it up there, you've got the lad Claridge on loan from Watford, who's had a bit of a, I can't remember if he played a full set, how much he played in the National League South, but he hasn't played at this level yet. Ben Jackson, also 21, he played 10 games for Livingston in the Scottish Championship, and that's as far as he got. And then Mearholes is making his debut. Believe he might actually be a midfielder who sort of can play in defence.
Yeah.
And when you see the first 2 goals and you sort of see how there's a couple of chances beforehand as well, and you see how open they are, and just it feels like the defence going to get left to their own devices, and it's a tough job anyway to play in defence for Aldershot. And I don't think it's necessarily the players involved that are bad players. A lot of them tend to be learning on the job, and it's just that structure at times. I think it goes, people just go walkabouts and they get left exposed, which is definitely what happened for the first 2 goals with Reading first dropping into the back post to finish, and then beating his man and crossing the ball to the back post where Ryan Hill got left 2v1 as well. So it's just similar things that they're always going to score goals, but you just know they're always going to concede goals too.
100%. And I think, last season, the excuse was with Aldershot is that a lot of the defenders were out injured. Of course, they've shipped a few on as well in the summer defensively as well and looked to bring in more defenders. But you look at that defence and it just lacks so much experience, particularly, doesn't it, there? It just feels like when you're so open as well, the defenders that you've got back are young lads. it's probably not the best move for them overall, I don't think, actually going to Aldershot, because you know that you're going to concede a lot of goals, and potentially it's because you've got to push forward so much, so you're going to be open defensively, and particularly against Altrincham with some of the forwards that they had, the likes of Ollie Crankshaw, who stood out in this match, I thought, for me, although he didn't score. You're always going to struggle, I suppose.
Yeah, I've Reading's the one that sort of caught my eye, but I've got a bit of an eye on him. I think, if I remember rightly, he got the record last season for most successful dribbles in a single game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just little things like that when you've got someone who's repeatedly going at his fullback consistently. Probably played more games than I realised last season, didn't start as many. And he's one on, Alti always seems to have one or two that just seem to come on strong during the season. I'm quite interested by his development this year. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they've got the goals. Gale's come in, had a couple of chances. Noel's come off the bench and scored. And yeah, I suppose the flip side is, Alti themselves, they like to play on the front foot and like to play forward. And when you are playing Aldershot, they get so many bodies forward and get bodies forward so quickly. It also brings the opportunities the other way. So just two pretty entertaining sides all told. And I don't think either of them leave this game feeling too bad about what happened. I know Widgerton spoke about being pleased with the reaction in the second half. Obviously, they scored 2 goals from set pieces. Parkinson probably similarly, can praise the mentality of his team for, going 2-2 and then managing to get the winner at the end. Just trying to tighten things up. I think I've just got maybe a little bit more trust in Altrincham to be able to settle down rather than Aldershot, who I think will just continue to go all out and, probably leave the defence wide open.
100%. And of course, when you're 2-0 down, they've got this ability to be able to come back. Potentially, other teams would have thought there, right, we'll take the point away at Altrincham. That's a good point on the opening game week. Whereas the way Aldershot are, it is literally just attack. And if it had come off potentially, and they did have the chances, Aldershot could have come away from this actually winning it and taking all 3 points. But unfortunately, Altrincham managed to get the winner late on. And of course, it was Jimmy Knowles on his debut, I believe, for Altrincham, who actually got the goal.
Yeah, free kick whipped in. Strange situation where the free kick got whipped in and Aldershot find themselves 4v4 defensively. They're all just man marking in the area where, you kind of think ordinarily you probably have an extra man or two defensively in the box to defend the set piece. And ball sort of, I think, ball bounced down or something along those lines. And Knowles was on hand just to react and finish. First goal for him. And I thought he had moments of Boston last season, so I'm interested to see how he gets on this year at Altrincham. Obviously, 2 ex-Mansfield lads there now, big, quick, both can run. Be an interesting battle for that number 9 shirt. It seems very much like they're both being primed to play as the number 9. So, be interested to see how that one goes.
Moving on to the next fixture then, if we can get it up here, it is, of course, going to be, I believe, Boreham Wood versus Rochdale. Of course, Rochdale got off to an impressive start. There's quite a high expectation for them this season. I think a lot of people have been quite impressed with the business they've done. And of course, new signing, very high-profile striker, Manny Disaruwe, got off to a good start, getting a brace for Rochdale. Of course, both goals coming in the second half. Away at Boreham Wood, who are always known to be very strong defensively. So I think Rochdale can say this is a very professional win to go down to Boreham Wood and take all 3 points.
Yeah, and I was impressed with the bravery for the 2 goals as well. It's one thing to be a side like Rochdale that play the lovely football, and there's a lot of rotation. You'll find players popping up all over the pitch, just in various positions. Players making underlapping runs, centre midfielders popping out wide, and it is, at this level, probably relatively a unique style. It's a slow, sort of methodical kind of game, and I think, being able to do that first day away from home at Boreham Wood, and then you see the 2 goals, and it's actually, the first one is Beckwith plays the forward pass, and it's him that's steaming forward, driving past, I think it's Charles Claydon trying to follow him. His forward run then drags out Reynolds out of position, which leaves Disaruwe, can't pronounce his name.
Yeah. A lot of people will struggle with that.
Big manner.
Yeah.
He gets the better of Bush, and then the second goal as well. the simple option is to play wide, and Gordon makes the forward pass inside to Dearsaruwe, who again, shows composure, shows a nice touch, beats his man, and a bit of fortune with the deflection. But again, it's he's turned his centre back and he's hit the ball against the centre midfielder, because the centre midfielder O'Connell's been dragged back into the box.
Yeah,
and I think it was everything good about what Rochdale done. The 2 goals probably showcase that. Wasn't all one-way traffic. Boreham would certainly had their moments. I think Claydon was particularly brought down the right-hand side and showed, it can really shift. But yeah, Gerrard put it down to Gerrard. I'm really not doing well here, am I? His first words when he did his interview was "Welcome to the National League," and he just spoke about his words were clinicality in both boxes. Which, to be fair, on the day, probably put it down to, Rochdale had their chances and they took them. Boreham Wood just didn't finish the chances they managed to create, and they got done inside their own area.
I think Rochdale as well, for me, I look at them and I do feel like last season, the football they played was excellent, but at times, potentially, they didn't take the chances. You could say last season, that's probably a reason that they didn't really push on into the top 3 overall. Whereas this season, it does feel like they found that missing piece in the jigsaw, being that big target man that can drop deep as well, and has kind of got everything to his game in Manny Desaruwe. And he's certainly got off to a good start. Like, they were strikers, finishers, if that makes sense, in the 2 goals. Particularly as well with the way Rochdale play. Last season, they have some great moves. They've made some great moves in the past, but it's just lacked that final end product, particularly with Cairo Mitchell last season. Whereas this season, they've got a prolific goal scorer who I genuinely think fits Rochdale's system perfectly. And I think this season Rochdale are going to score a lot of entertaining goals. I think there's going to be a lot of great moves as a team goals, I think, overall, when I look across this team. And I think in terms of the balance, I think across the division, Rochdale probably have the most balance to them, where they've got a good defence, a strong midfield, and then they've got 2 great strikers in Devante Rodney and Manny Desaruwe.
Yeah, and I think the other thing this season as well, he spoke about it a few times last year, McNulty, in terms of he likes to rotate, he likes to give players an opportunity, and I think you can just see already the quality they're able to bring off the bench already. You look at the subs they made during the game, and you bring it on David Tutonda, who spent most of his recent years playing in Leagues 1 and 2. Alarakia, Amanchi, Case Petit, and obviously Ian Henderson gets his minutes on the pitch. And you're also looking at guys like Dan Moss has arrived. You've still got Anthony Mancini, they've got serious options and depth to be able to go again this year. And I think it could be the difference. The 2 things I've wanted to see with Rochdale are, I don't think they do enough off the ball. I think they tend to drop themselves back into a shape and give teams too much of the ball, essentially. And I think they can be a little bit more aggressive off the ball. And the other thing is their record against the best sides in the division last year was really poor. So, we've mentioned having that ruthlessness in the final third now, but also having the extra options. Maybe they can be a little braver in the way they play. And it'd be interesting to see how that comes off, because that could be the difference between, finishing 4th and finishing 3rd, and potentially even pushing a little bit higher against the, presumably a York City that, we're expecting to be right at the top of the division.
As for Boreham Wood, then, opening game week in the National League, you've mentioned there the words that Gerrard used, is welcome to the National League. Potentially, you could say outclassed on the forward front. And I think that's the concern for Boreham Wood this season, is defensively, it feels like they're fine. These are experienced lads, if you look across that back 4 or 5 there. However, on the forward front, a lot of unproven players. You look at the likes of Susu, who's probably seen as the star man going forward. He's never been prolific throughout his career. Do you feel there's concerns there for Bournemouth, or do you just think overall they've come up against one of the best sides in the division and they can't particularly read too much into this game because they're not going to be judged on a home game with Rochdale?
I think there is an element of that. This isn't the game you're going to judge their season on. The one thing I think of when I look at their team is, aside from the centre halves, it's maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but outside the centre halves, Elisami and Norris, it's not the biggest, strongest team which you probably associate with Gerrard and Bournemouth of the past. I don't think there's a lack of work ethic, and I think, again, they had moments in this game where they really could have taken the opportunities. I'm surprised they haven't brought in a little bit more power to the side, maybe. They're also still a little bit light in defence at the moment, so it'd be interesting to see how they go about improving things. But the signings they've made so far, it's not necessarily that they're bad signings in any way, and I thought Tom White had a decent game in fairness in midfield from what I've seen. But yeah, I just wonder, could they have brought in a little bit more quality and power to the side? It'd be interesting to see how they go and maybe what they do in terms of additions during the season.
Moving on to the next fixture then, newly promoted Brackley Town got off to a good start against Eastleigh, who themselves I think are judged this season that they should really be kicking on now, particularly when we look at the squad on paper that they've got. A lot of people have got quite high expectations for them, but it was down to a penalty that Burn put away for Brackley on why they actually went on to win this game. But I think overall, over the 90 minutes, Brackley did deserve to win. I don't think they were fortunate. They had 17 shots. As for Eastleigh, of course, opening day, it's always going to be difficult going to a newly promoted side who are going to have a lot of momentum, particularly when they've waited so long to be in this division. However, you look at Eastleigh as a side that should be looking to kick on some of the quality there, the likes of, particularly, obviously, you look at Paul McCallum firstly, but Lundstrom coming in from Oldham and Brindley defensively. Of course, himself as well, former Notts County defender. Do you feel overall that they've underperformed in this match overall? And you look at them, they should really be looking to be pushing for the playoffs this season, and this isn't the start they wanted against a newly promoted side.
Yeah, the thing two things surprised me in this game. One, I realise there's been injuries and stuff like that, and they're quite a young bench in fairness, but 9 new signings played in this game, or started this game. Obviously, the 2 you've just mentioned, McCallum and Brindley, are the only 2 that aren't brand new signings. And the scale of change has sort of caught me off guard a little bit. I know Davis admitted that Nick Townsend had more to do and, was the better keeper. I think Cowan also praised him as well. The other thing that surprised me, and I hold my hands up that, I've certainly not watched Holzman play, and I haven't seen Aweka for a long time. Aweka. Again, apologies if I've pronounced the name wrong. But the layout of the back three sort of surprised me as well in terms of having the, big, muscly lads sort of either side, and Holzman in the middle, who was the one to give away the penalty. I'm interested to see going forward how that balance kind of strikes. I know Pierre's a left footer, but in my mind, he's a big, powerful, strong sort of organising unit. I half expected him to be in the middle of the back throw. I think, they're still short up front. Obviously, Shade's gone to Burton, and they haven't replaced him as of yet. You'd imagine Jake Taylor's going to come back in, Niall Mayer, or hopefully come back in at some point. So not all bad and not all lost. But yeah, just I think the scale of change sort of caught me off guard with Eastleigh, and perhaps that's played a part in just a pretty bad opening day performance all round.
As for Brackley, then, the perfect start in the National League for themselves. A few people have, of course, written them off this season, and a great start against an Eastleigh side who, on paper, although they've got a lot of new players, I think a lot of people have got quite high expectations for them this season. So, yeah, a perfect start for them, and I think for me, I'm getting the impression. I know it's only one game week, but the way Brackley play and everything, I think their home ground's going to be a real fortress this season and could be key in them being able to survive this year.
Yeah, big unit, aren't they? Just looking at the 11 laid out there.
Nottingham and Morrison, yeah.
Yeah, and then, Dean, I think Brown's a pretty big lad, even though he's quite skinny. Lowe can throw himself about up top. It's, quite a big team. I wasn't sure with Brackley, and I listened to Gavin Cowan in pre-season, and I think they won the pre-season game, and he just refused to let the standards drop. And it was that little thing that just, only a little thing in a pre-season interview, but it just impressed me in terms of he didn't get carried away or anything like that. It was very much, we've got to be better. We've got to be ready for the start of the season. They've got real leaders in that group. Probably the only thing that might knock them back potentially is depth. but we'll see how they get on over the course of the season. But early instincts are they might be all right. They might survive, which, given the years it's taken them to get into the division, all those playoff failures and stuff, you'd like to think that they're going to give it a really good go and stay up first time round at least.
Next fixture then, potentially the shock of the game week. Braintree Town, who I think are a lot of people's favourites to actually get relegated this season, comfortably defeating a Halifax side, of course, with a new manager, quite a lot of new players coming in, but a Halifax side that finished 6th last season in the National League.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is your team. I don't know if you want to have a run first before. In fairness, I thought. I mean, I'm the same as others. The Morecambe situation aside, Braintree are the side that you look at and think they're most likely to go down. I do like the late business of bringing in Tommy Smith and Frankie Terry. I think it just solidifies them a little bit defensively. Looking back at this game, I kind of got the impression they were the worst probable team you could have faced on opening day, just in terms of... I look at the defence you've lined up with, and, the midfield are sort of still getting... There's a lot of new players in the side, and you face a team that are very comfortable in who they are, what they do. They've got that underdog mentality. They want to put balls into the box. And, I'm sure you'll tell me, when you look at the 3 goals, they're just, from a defensive point of view for Halifax, they just look calamitous. Really lacking sort of leadership, organisation in there, and it feels like it's very much going to be a work in progress. And dare I say, vibes of when Chris Millington first took over, and it was a little bit shaking, a little bit awkward early doors, and Lakeland's probably going to have to find his feet with a squad that I don't think there's anyone in there that can't play at National League level, but as a unit, it feels like he's going to have to maybe find his shape. And I wouldn't be too surprised if maybe he ends up moving to a back 3 just to solidify that defence a little bit. But again, I could be totally wrong. Just first vibes and first viewing, just to make sure that you're defending your box properly first and foremost, because some of those goals are just awful.
Unacceptable. Unacceptable. I'd put it down to be honest, overall. And I think a big key factor as well, I think there's a few factors you can actually look at early doors for Halifax. Is one that 7 new players coming in, only 4 of last season's squad was actually starting there. Of course, that's Cook, Bray, Adatore and Johnson. The rest are all new players. Potentially as well, it's never really affected Halifax, apart from maybe you look back at the playoff fixtures in the past, but the lack of experience in that side, like the only real experienced players are Sam Johnson in net, and then of course Hobson. The rest of the squad are all under the age of 25, I believe. You look at that overall, and potentially, like you mentioned there, coming up as a Braintree side where you've got a lot of experience on the forward front, the likes of Akinde, I think, and a side that you look at them last season, a lot of the players played for them last season. Overall, and they just have this way of playing that it's simple, hoofing it forward for Akinde to hold up, putting balls into the box, and when it's a new defence that's still trying to organise themselves, it's always going to be a tough ask. You've mentioned there about you don't think any individuals that can't play at this level. I'd fairly agree. I think over time we're going to learn more about the individuals and what they're capable of, and I think your first game away from home at a Braintree side who, although are favourites to go down, looking to prove a lot of people wrong, who are themselves, got a lot of players who were there from last season. I think it was always going to be a difficult type of game. Potentially for me, I was a little naive with my prediction now when you actually look at Braintree and the time it can take sides to really settle in, particularly when you look at a lot of the players are coming up from the leagues below, or they're playing men's football for the first time in their career. I think overall it's going to be difficult, and the main concern for me was probably defensively. We've always been renowned to be good defensively. I think on paper you look at the 2 centre halves and you think they're not going to concede many this season, and I probably will stand by that. I just think it's going to take time over time for them to really adjust to playing with each other. The first goal was a crossing that were put away, where I think Walker beat Adatore to it, which you could say is a good goal. However, the other 2 goals were were just awful mistakes by Sam Johnson overall, and that is unlike him, isn't it?
Yeah, very unlike Johnson. Obviously, he's been a very steady hand for a number of years now. Yeah, I think to touch on your point defensively, could be wrong. I think both of your centre halves are big, powerful defenders and guys that probably want to showcase that. But I think maybe it's just having that someone in there who can organise and provide a little bit of composure. Maybe in the way that a Will Smith did for a lot of last season, and perhaps Adam Senior as well, who sort of took on that leadership role. Possibly even Joe Cummins too. And I think that'll be the interesting thing with regards to just whether one of them really steps up and takes that leadership mantle, or whether it does take someone else to come in and just provide that little bit of composure, maybe, and allow those guys to, use their strength, use their power, and dominate opponents. Because the goals, it's not necessarily that they're being out-muscled or bullied or anything like that. It was just a positional sense. Players running off them. Obviously, Johnson losing his man, a bad clearance in the box that just sort of ends up with the ball bouncing around. So it's not like there were, a bad defending as such. It was more the or bad individual defending. It was more the
organisation.
The organisation, the positioning, and that sort of stuff. And I think that's where I think that's the side of it that's going to grow, isn't it? Over time, and I'd imagine Lakeland's admitted himself he's quite he's happy to be versatile, happy to adapt when he needs to, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of changes made just to try and feel out what works as the best combination. A lot of your players have come in late during the summer as well, haven't they? It took a bit of time for him to get his bodies in the door. So we'll see how that one goes. I wouldn't be overly concerned or too concerned, given the nature of sort of what occurred. And I think, to be fair, we should praise Braintree. They know what they are. They're very effective. Pitt said after the game that Lewis Walker was the player he wanted. He thinks he'll score a lot of goals at this level, and he scored 2 and played a role in the second goal as well. So a well-organised unit, a team that know what they are, and I think playing at home against a team that are still trying to find themselves, really.
Yeah, 100%. And to be fair, the reason I'm not overly concerned and too, suppose, negative about Halifax is because there were signs there, particularly on the forward front, that kind of impressed me, probably more than last season, because that was always kind of the issue, I suppose, was going forward in the past couple of years. It felt like they were trying to get the ball forward. They kind of did try to have this identity, but it just felt like they hadn't played together enough. And particularly look at pre-season. They've had a good pre-season, but they're playing against very, very weak opposition. When they're coming up against a really big physical Braintree side, it's a completely different story, and it's hard to kind of prepare yourself for that. But the likes of Hugo, Johnson, for me, I think are great individuals. I think if you look at 11 man-to-man, 11 to 11, it's probably not the best time to say this. I think Halifax have got the better individuals there overall. The concern was obviously Braintree probably understood that, did their homework more on Halifax, and found an effective method that was effective, where it felt like Halifax were kind of a little bit naive. Particularly, you might look at Lakeland and say they're quite naive. They wanted to play their own style without really taking any notice at the opposition and what they're capable of. I just think they felt they could turn up potentially and outclass Braintree, and that certainly wasn't the case. And I think a lot of the new lads who potentially haven't played at this level before have kind of been, I won't say humbled, but I suppose shocked by what teams can do to you, particularly when, this may be harsh, but I think it's true, lack a bit of quality. And I think Braintree were just effective in what they did. But I'm not particularly too concerned overall. I think for Braintree, they can take a lot of positives from that. But I think it's a long season ahead, and I'm not going to suddenly change my mind on the fact that I think they're going to go down and struggle. I think still a very small squad. And I think this is a game that potentially suited them overall, whereas Halifax, I think, would like to be back at home, particularly on a new pitch with players that like to play on the floor overall. I think, in my opinion, personally. So I'm not too concerned, but I don't think it'll get any easier on Saturday coming against a Wealdstone side who themselves are probably a little bit, you could compare them to Braintree overall.
Yeah, I think, I think this is very much a case of let's see how things go. I think the nature of this game, planned out quite well for Braintree, probably less so for Halifax. With Braintree, like I've had them to go down. I think it's more sort of maybe some of the off-field issues that occurred last year. The dropping the budget and stuff like that. Probably depth as well. But Pitt has, he's proven himself a reliable recruiter in the past. Did an excellent job last season, and I don't want to put my colours to the mast just yet. But I want to see how they go. I think they've got an opportunity to survive. It would just be I think let's see how maybe the first month or two goes with regards to players staying fit, what kind of bodies they can get through the door, and so on. And the 11's not bad. It's not bad at all.
Someone as well to mention for Braintree, Hubbard, who's of course from Swindon. Very, very small, and the type of player I admire because I'm quite small myself, and I look at players like that who do well. And he was just everywhere. It felt like just the passion and the effort level just stood out to me on the pitch overall. Of course, a new player coming into the side, he's someone potentially to watch out for this season. And of course, we've mentioned Akinde. You know what to expect from him. Held the ball up very well and potentially bullied these two. You could say at times I felt overall, but I do think for Halifax it is the case of them adjusting and potentially Lakeland finding his best 11 as well. We'll move on from that fixture and move on to the next one. And I think some will say it's a similar story for Gateshead. Of course, they're coming against, on paper, a lot stronger opposition. But I've got my own thoughts on this. I think you look overall at the goals that they conceded, I get the impression Gateshead are wanting to play that passing out from the back, nice, easy on the eye style of football. However, unlike previous years, I don't think they've got the players to be able to do that. 3 mistakes led to Southend's goals. It was all from them attempting to pass out from the back. And when you're coming up against the Southend side, particularly with the likes of Kendall and Walker, who will press high up the field, it's always going to be difficult, particularly when it's a new team adapting, trying to play that style. And I think Gates had played right into Southend's hands. All 3 goals were from Southend trying to pass out from the back. The one that stood out was, of course, the 3rd goal, Kendall winning the ball back and then chipping the goalkeeper from probably about, I'm not very good with my yards, probably about that position there, as you can see my mouse. An excellent performance from Southend, very much like them. And for Gateshead, trying to pass out from the back when, in my opinion, they don't actually have the players to be able to do that, particularly when you look at the players that they've lost in the summer, the likes of Booty, Hannett, of course, didn't play much last season, but Greg Ollie as well. What's your thoughts on this game overall?
So, I predicted Gateshead to go down, and I was a bit
you're only one
on it.
Me and you.
I was a little bit hit and miss on it. I had a few sides that, you're kind of dropping in and out of the relegation zone, sort of trying to find large predictions. And then you see the 11 on opening day and go, I think there's a chance. I mean, they may well add players during the season, but straight away you look at that midfield and go, 19 years old, 20 years old, very little first team experience between them. The centre halves, I think, are generally excellent players, but they struggled for fitness last year and they've got very little behind that. You're looking at the players they're bringing off the bench and it just feels... I'm not entirely sure where Gateshead are at the moment. I think they're in a very difficult spot with regards to... They had a very difficult second half to last season. I think the identity they built, and it's almost a case of having to try and recreate that identity. Armstrong sort of touched on it during the summer about trying to recreate a new identity with the team and talking about, some of the younger players that can step up. And this was probably the worst possible game they could have started with.
Yeah.
Southend, for 3-4 years now, even when they were going through the, difficult times they were under, the previous owner, whose name I don't really want to mention. They've been one of the best 3, 4, 5 sides in the league for a long time now. Just consistently, very good defensively, very good off the ball, very good at creating opportunities. Probably just lacking that bit of ruthlessness at times. I mean, as you mentioned, the 3 goals here are literally, the first one is cheap giveaway, midfield don't react, and Walker scores. Sorry, Austin scored.
Yeah.
Second one, cheap giveaway, Austin finds Walker to score. Third one, Brooks just passes the ball straight against Grayson's legs and he's miles out of position. And it probably couldn't have got easier for them in sort of that regard. Gateshead very much did gift them the goals. But I think, when you look at the two sides, you're looking at a team that are very much at the start of a new build and a new identity and really need to try and find themselves quickly against a team that they've known what they are for 3-4 years now. They've managed to evolve, thankfully, under the new ownership. Probably a little bit more depth this season. I know Mayor was talking after the game about players that he didn't select for the side. Cav Miley's only trying for a couple of days. Ollie Coker wasn't in the squad. Andrew Dallas has just come into the squad, but was obviously on the bench, and they look good. They really do look good.
Yeah.
And I've got a good feeling about Southend this year with regards to potentially pushing towards that top 3 finish, which again, it'd be interesting to see how they go with regards to probably just whether they can be ruthless enough in the final third. You'd like to think they've got the strikers now. And I think that'll be the difference between them finishing in the top 3 and maybe top 7.
Defensively really strong. I just feel like as a team, they're coached perfectly under May and the way they play. And, there's that really established that identity, particularly in the last couple of years, as you've said. And unlike other sides, they're not feeling the need to just splash the cash in the summer. They're making cute additions that don't unsettle the squad. The likes of, Austin coming in there just gives them that bit of quality, I think, potentially, to create more opportunities, which is something that in the past Southend have kind of received criticism for, is the fact that they don't create enough opportunities. And I think he offers something a little bit different in that attacking midfield role. Boys from on the left-hand side and attacking fullback to complement Scott Morris on his own side. But then going forward, Kendall got into form towards the back end of last season, presses high, which is something Southend like to do. And he's starting to score goals now. And if you saw that third goal, it was just a touch of quality to be able to chip the goalkeeper. And we've not even spoke about Andrew Dallas, who I believe might have come off from the bench, but he's a player that's proven to be prolific in this division, and he's going to be a great addition for them overall. But finally touching on Gateshead, I just think midfield, particularly as you've said, lacks so much experience. Even the likes of Telford and Chapman, who played, they're players that have spent the majority of last season out injured. Fitness, I think, is going to be an issue for them this season, and Gateshead can't afford to get players injured, because they've only got a small squad and they lack depth and quality specifically. So I am, like you, very concerned for them. I think you're the only other person who's actually put them in the bottom 3 or 4 this season. I am a little concerned for Gateshead. Particularly feel that they may have to change the way they play and adapt throughout the season, because I can't see that style, that fluid football being effective for them this season. And I think it'll just play into too many teams' hands. We'll move on to the next fixture now, which is, of course, Solihull Moors, a club close to you, coming up against Forest Green Rovers. 10 men, Solihull Moors as well, picking a point up against one of the favourites in Forest Green. Of course, Robbie Savage getting off to probably not the ideal start, particularly considering Solihull went down to 10 men. I think we're seeing a very different type of Solihull, Forest Green, in the way they like to play this season, which may take time for them to adapt. But I think over the course of the season, it will become very effective. What's your thoughts on this game overall?
Yeah, so this is the game I chose to sit and watch on Saturday. And I thought it'd be an ideal opportunity. First game of the season, let's have a look at, two fairly new sides, particularly in terms of, Matt Taylor and Robbie Savage trying to put their stamp on things. And then within 6 minutes, Darius Lipschick gets sent off. It was a red card. I think even Matt Taylor admitted that one. He's, booted Bamber in the face, and can't really argue with that one. From there, it was, as you'd expect, pretty much all Forest Green territory. They move the ball well. It's very positive. A lot of triangles, a lot of movement. You tend to find McAllister and Clark were dropping into half positions, take the ball off the centre half. The fullbacks were getting up high. Quite enjoyable. Quite an enjoyable style to watch. Tried to play quickly, tried to get the ball in the box. The difference proved to be ultimately Nick Houghton having his sort of, usual first out of the season against Solihull Moors, scored a hat-trick there last season. And his delivery for the first goal was decent, but it was also him that started, up the tempo, got the ball moving. And then the second goal, it's just glorious. Decided to try and lob the keeper with his left foot from the edge of the box, and absolutely brilliant. Savage pointed towards issues defending crosses. Mentioned it about their pre-season game with Walsall as well. And both the goals here have come from the ball being played across the box and Rutherford getting in on the first one. And the second one, I'm struggling to remember who scored it now.
For Forest Green?
No, for Solihull Moors.
Rutherford.
I can't think who scored the second goal. Rutherford and...
that was it, Clark.
James Clark, yes. Another ball into the box. It was down the right-hand side, ball come across, and James Clark buried the ball. A bit of a slight miscue, but you take them. I think the thing that impressed me most with Solihull Moors was just the attitude and the application. Taylor spent a lot of last season concerned with players not being fit, players not showing desire, probably not really caring. I thought he was a bit brazen at times and a bit blunt with the way he spoke about the players, and almost felt like he wasn't just sort of refusing to take responsibility for the issues that they're having. But in fairness to them, they really committed here. They got several blocks in the box. I don't know if it's available on the highlights, but Shazam Whitehall produces an unbelievable block on the line to deny Abraham Kana. And I think it's all you can ask for in a game like this. You're playing quality opposition, and you've dug in, you've taken your chances when they've come, and sort of given the fans something to get behind for the start of the season. Which, particularly when Matt Taylor was already under pressure, when Stephen Ward walked out the door last week, who was clearly an ally for Taylor. It'll be an interesting start to the season for Taylor and this Solihull Moors side, and this is the right way to go about it.
As for Forest Green Rovers, they kept 75% possession in this match. Does it feel like to you it's a very different type of Forest Green Rovers this season compared to the previous? You look at the lack of possession they had in the matches last season, whereas, as I suspect, this season they're looking to dominate the ball under Robbie Savage. And of course, that may take time for players from last season in particular to adjust. But I think over time, they should flourish with that style.
I'm intrigued with Forest Green. This very much felt like a work in progress. Obviously, given the nature of the game, given the quality of the players, they've got this very much suited them. They, get hold of the ball, they move the ball. They've got quality in the final third. When you've got Doidge and Mitchell both in the box, and Houghton and Clark and McAllister just sort of floating around, and Bamber involved, it's very enjoyable to watch. As mentioned, defending the ball in their own box is an issue. The other thing, so when I was doing my preview, 10 of the first 12 signings have made a combined 43 league starts at National League level or above so far in the career. And it's a lot of change, a lot of new players playing, a lot of potential inexperience, but also a lot of the players from last season are very experienced. They're either being moved on or are sort of hanging around the place at the moment. Like Sean Long wasn't in the squad at all on Saturday. And I'm just interested to see how that balance works between, Savage has obviously given a lot of his new guys the ball on Saturday, put them in the starting 11. A couple of them came off at half-time. And it'd just be interesting to see whether he can find the right balance between utilising the experience and the quality already in the dressing room and matching that with the quality of the new players he's brought in. And I think if he gets that right, there's a very, very good team there. If he doesn't, and he very much keeps trying to push maybe some of the previous guys aside, I'm curious how that works in regards to the balance of the team, sort of how the fans react if things don't go well. I'm very much in the mindset of work in progress with Forest Green at the moment, and I want to see how it unfolds, perhaps over a couple of months, and see where they stand after that, I think.
Am I right in saying there's only 3 players in that Forest Green side might even be 2, that was that actually were there last season. Well, started last season.
Yeah, so 9 new signings in the 11. Jordan Moore-Taylor and Carl McAllister are the 2 that are still sticking around. I'm trying to think
like some, you think of like some McCann, Robson, out not involved in the side either.
Well, Charlie McCann, Jamie Robson, and Joe Quigley all ended their contracts last week.
Oh God, I've missed that.
Quigley and Robson have both joined Oldham Athletic in League 2. Adam May came off the bench. Tom Knowles came off the bench. Let's have a look at my squad list here. Bunker was on the bench. Harris and Innes weren't involved at all. Long wasn't involved. I think did Cardwell make the bench? I don't know if he's fit or not. No, so there's no Harry Cardwell. Liam Sercombe, I believe, is available. So, it's a very big change from last season. Savage was saying after the game as well, there's going to be more change to come. Mentioned players not in the 18 and that there's more to come in. So, there's still going to be a lot of change to that squad. And like I say, I am interested by the balance and how that works moving forward. Are they just... I believe part of it is a redressing of the wage situation at the club. Obviously, they've had a lot of different managers, a lot of different directors of football, a lot of different styles and so on. So I believe they are trying to redress that a little bit. But yeah, it'll be... it's just a lot of change. And if I'm honest, it makes me feel a little uncomfortable just on the point of view of I'm very big on stability and players turning up, knowing who the manager is, where they're playing, and starting the season on the right front, on the front foot. It'll be an interesting one to see how. I'm just interested to see how that goes.
Moving on to the next fixture, newly promoted Scunthorpe United heading to a Tamworth side that certainly surprised a lot last season. They'd only been defeated 5 times at home last season. It clearly wasn't an issue for Scunthorpe, though, this season, and not the start that Tamworth wanted to get off to, with having such a good reputation of having a strong home form. But as for Scunthorpe, very well done. Of course, Danny Whitehall scoring early for them.
Yeah, lovely free kick as well. Danny Whitehall's ability to strike a football is... I feel like he goes a little underrated by people that don't watch Danny Whitehall play week in, week out. But he's scored some unbelievable goals over the years. Tamworth responded in kind, a long throw, ball fell to the back post for Hollis to smash him. And then Ollie Ewing on his debut. Ewing. I'll find out the pronunciations for these guys. But yeah, he smashed him for his first goal in his league debut, which was quite nice. Tamworth had a couple of moments, and the biggest one probably fell right at the depth where Honoru couldn't quite sort his feet out in the final third to potentially get a goal late, right in, I think it was like the 101st minute or something along those lines. I can't lie, I found the highlights to this quite difficult to watch. The Scunthorpe ones were posted in 480p, which... wasn't the like watching something filmed on an old Nokia phone. So it wasn't the easiest to watch in terms of watching back on this game. But I think for Tamworth, it's very much a case of, I think they know what they are. I think they know what they're about. A lot of the same players from last season started, with the exception of a couple of the forwards. So I think we'll see a gradual change on that front. And with Scunthorpe again, a lot of last season's team played. I think Ewing and Horton and Declan Howell were the only new starters. So I think two sides that very much know what they are, know what they're about, and it'll be a gradual development as the season goes on, I think, with regards to just trickling some of the new guys as they get fit and get ready.
Of course, Roberts and Whitehall are the two key players that I think when you think of Scunthorpe, you think of those two individuals. Of course, Roberts himself didn't score, but actually got an assist in this match. He's going to be pivotal this season for Scunthorpe United, no doubt. And I think the only concern for me is, like, if that 11 was there throughout the full 46 games, particularly keeping these two fit, you'd think Scunthorpe will have a very, very successful season overall. However, the concern is, of course, going to be Roberts and Whitehall staying fit, particularly Roberts himself with his injury record. However, last season spent the majority of it fit, and you'd like to think this season he can remain fit as well overall. I think just finally, as for Tamworth, I don't think it's too concerning. I think it's more of the same from them, and they've probably not got off to the start that they wanted overall. But as for Scunthorpe, very, very good start, because that's not an easy game at all, going to Tamworth away.
Nah, and I think what both these sides will be, when you look at the teams here and now, what both sides will be is very effective in both boxes. Both have got very experienced back lines. They'll defend the box properly, and they will, find ways to get into the final third and attack the opposition. They've both got quality. They've both got ways of getting into the final third, and I think both have got a real good chance of being okay this season. It would just purely be down to, like I say, how often they can keep the key players fit as to how far they go.
Moving on to the next fixture, Wealdstone, another side that a lot of people have got to be relegated this season. Got off to a good start, coming up against newly promoted Truro, of course, won the National League South. I think a lot of people are quite optimistic about Truro this season, particularly with manager John Askey. However, they've not got off to the best of starts, losing to a Wealdstone side that survived by 1 point last season on the final day.
Yeah, second season in a row that Wealdstone has survived on the final day. And obviously you get the alarm bells ring straight away at the start of the season when, Neil Gibson's gone, Lee Jones has gone, the club are announcing that there was, a logistical element to it, which is understandable. But also, talking about lowering the budget as well. Obviously, I believe the owners really sort of supported with regards to the additions of people like Alex Reid last year. Probably trying to go a fairer way about it. They've done some interesting business this summer. I think in Musa and Kaji straight away, you look at two midfielders that have certainly got the ability to play at this level.
Just consistency with them both, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what worried me mostly through the squad. They struggled for consistent selection last season. I think you can see straight away you've got three leaders in that team. I know Sam Cox has announced Baldwin, Cook and Kretschmar as his sort of three leaders this season. The one I'm interested by is Sean Adarko coming back in. Almost had a wonderful return with a curling effort from distance. And you could see that, the qualities that were there a couple of seasons ago remain. Obviously had a very tough year last year. And it's nice to see him back playing, to be honest. He's a player I had an eye on with the ability to, push on and move back into the AFL. I think with Wealdstone, again, it's another one where it's game week 1. It's a good victory. They limited Truro to very few chances. They've got a real sort of physicality about them. They're a pretty big unit all told.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had a couple of chances from set pieces as well, which is always useful. And it'd be interesting to see how they go. I don't want to base things too much on game week 1, particularly playing, newly promoted opposition who, dare I say, are a little bit naive during the game at points. Not necessarily really poor, just a little bit naive and perhaps a little bit wet beyond the ears at points. But for Wealdstone, I think, turned up, got a 2-0 win on opening day. It's all you can really ask for, to be honest.
Felt really professional and felt like it was never in doubt for Wealdstone to not win this match. I think a big key for them is, of course, Enzo Bolgwijn getting off to a good start, scoring himself. I remember when he signed, he was quite a marquee signing for me because I think everyone knows he's a very capable striker at this level, if not higher, from his days at Notts County and Sutton. However, the issues with him has always been consistency. And last season, there were very few games where he particularly stood out, where on the opening game week for me, getting off to a good start with a goal and having quite an impressive performance. It has to take a lot of positive, I think, for Wealdstone this season, because I think on paper, there's not many players that stand out to me that are going to be able to produce that quality, week in, week out. And I just look at Bolgwijn, I look at Kretschmar, and for him, if he's getting off to a good start, we know what he can do. He will be key in them potentially surviving this season, I think.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the three lads, Cook, Baldwin, and Kretschmar, are going to have very big impacts with regards to Wealdstone this season, just in terms of their experience. I quite like as well, they brought in Lucas Coverland the other day, who I know has been a little bit of a wild card, but again, you've got Baptiste, who got his opportunity last season, and he's got the number one this year. He'll get his opportunity again, but it's just little bits of experience for the spawn of the team that I think will be important as the season goes on.
Just finally for Truro then, first match actually in the National League in their history, not got off to the best of starts. You mentioned there about him being a little bit naive. Potentially you'd have thought under John Askin. Of course, it is only game week 1 for them. With him being so well to the division, he'll know what's expected. And potentially, you've mentioned naive there, coming up against a side who, on paper, if you want to survive, I think you've got to go to Wealdstone and be getting something. I think it's going to take time for them to potentially adjust to this division. Of course, the starting 11 is the starting 11 that won the National League South with them on that final day. So no new players there who've got much experience of this division either.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, isn't it? Oxlade Chamberlain this year, Kidderminster, there's a couple of lads that have had game time at, particularly the likes of Plymouth, in Law and Jeff Carr. I remember Law having a brilliant game at Blues actually in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just a little bit naive on the day. I think they had a couple of decent opportunities at 0-0 and tried to overplay when it comes to the final third or to take an extra touch. And then you see the 2 goals. The first one's an in-swinging corner. They just don't deal with really bad clearance in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one, Hutchinson puts the ball in, the ball gets headed back and just nobody reacts and Hutchinson gets there first. And it's just little things like that you can't afford to do. You get guys like Luke Gerrard will talk about, being clinical in both boxes, and it tends to be a running theme across the division. Graham Coughlan's another one. And I think John Askey will look at the game. I haven't listened to his interview yet, but I'd imagine Askey will have spoken after the game about, just being more ruthless in both boxes, making sure you clear your lines and defend your box properly. And when you get your opportunity in the opposition half, you take it. One player that did catch the eye, and it's probably not a big surprise, but I thought Tyler Harvey looks like he's got a little bit about him. And you'd imagine, given all the goals he scored last year, the fact that he's been there for years now, you'd think he's going to have a decent impact as far as their survival hopes are concerned.
Moving on to the next fixture, Carlisle United, first game in this division in 20 years, coming up against a working side, new ownership, quite high expectations for them this season to have a push for the playoffs. There were questions about Carlisle and how they were approaching the National League in terms of their opinion about how they can get straight back out of it, and potentially people have accused them of being naive. In terms of the recruitment, I'd say no. But I felt this would be a tricky game. And although they've won, I think it was a tricky game at times. You spoke there about being good in both boxes. It's a theme across the division, like you've mentioned. You could say that for this game, because Woking certainly had the chances. But as for Carlisle, I keep repeating this word, it's a professional performance. First game in the National League in 20 years. Teams often struggle, where Carlisle have gone to a tough Woking side and, to be honest, won the match. I think a good win. Luke Armstrong coming back into the division. He's got off to a good start. We know he can be prolific at this level, and it was a great strike for them in the second half to score. And of course, coming on from the bench, Robson, of course, got the second goal for Carlisle. He's a player who's received a lot of criticism and potentially been someone who could leave the side. What's your thoughts on it overall?
When Carlisle got relegated and they brought Tierney in as director of football, Mark Hughes was sticking around, Regan Linney was the first big signing, and my first thought was, are they going about things the same way they've gone about things in recent years, even though they come out with the whole, we've done a full-scale review of all operations across the club to try and get things sorted. So I kept a keen eye on them during pre-season. It was quite notable that as things got later into pre-season, they were picking a consistent team, and it looked like they were going a very specific way about things. And you could see that come to fruition in this game. It was very much a 4-2-3-1. Emberton's got a free role. Armstrong has got support and bodies around him in Linney and Ajiboy. There's serious quality in the 11. There's serious quality coming off the bench. I think Carlisle, my immediate impressions are, if anyone's going to stop York this season win the league, I think Carlisle are possibly the best chance of doing it. I've just got a really good feeling about, they've got leaders for the spot on the team, they've got physicality, they've got, in Armstrong and Linney, you'd imagine a lot of goals. Emberton's the type of player that if you can get him fit and, energised and wanting to play football, he should be far too good for this level. This game here, I know Wildy spoke about Woking playing with a bit of anxiety and players not doing the right things, but also Carlisle, as you say, it was a professional. They did the right things. They played off their men. They made sure that they had bodies running forward, made sure that they defended the box properly. And it's still a work in progress. There's still things to do. There's a couple of nervy moments, particularly in the second half. But Woking didn't have a shot inside the area until the 52nd minute. And in Luke Armstrong, the first finish is fantastic. He was very unfortunate not to get a second one when he took a big boot in the face. I don't know if anyone's seen the picture of his face after the game. And the second one's a lovely free kick from Ethan Robson. And I think that's probably another one where, talk about Emberton, Ethan Robson's probably another one. It's potentially a better environment, a more settled environment. And when you've got players that, have had difficult times and they're coming back into the environment. Armstrong's another one who's come back into the environment, and Hughes was quite positive about his attitude. If it's a better environment, you'll see quality players thrive because they're around good players that are working hard and working as a team, and they've got something to go forward with. Last season was a complete and utter mess, but they stopped the bleeding coming towards the end of the season. I think they're going to start this season well.
100%. As well defensively, Hayden, we know what he's about. The issues that's held him back has obviously, of course, been injuries. If he can stay fit this season, I thought he was excellent in this match from the highlights. Terrell Thomas as well, I thought he was strong, and he's someone who's received a bit of criticism within the Carlisle fan base from last season particularly. I thought those two as a pair in this division, I can't see them leaking too many goals at all. Great start for Carlisle United. I don't think Woking will be an easy place to go this season at all. So I think they've done very well there to get all 3 points. As for Woking, the concern could be maybe the lack of forward depth, I think, overall this season. I think as a unit, I expect them to be very hard to break down. Although Carlisle did, I think you look at the quality, I think they're going to be able to break down most sides in this division. But for Woking, I think they'll be hard to break down this season. I just have a few concerns maybe on the forward front for them overall.
Yeah, I think with Woking, you know what you're going to get with Neil Ardley. His teams don't lose many games. I think the interesting thing is whereas we've seen Woking in the past go very much for a win now philosophy, it seems like they're trying to organise themselves into a position where they've got some experienced talent, some young talent, players they can potentially develop and sort of move on and, continue to grow the club in that sense and run things well. I think in Jody Brown and Neil Ardley, they certainly appear to be doing things, the right way, if you like. It would just be interesting. Yeah, another team that I think we'll see how they go for the first couple of months. I'm quietly confident on them, but probably do need just a little bit more in terms of I don't know if it's necessarily quality, but I think when you look at the spot on the team, there's maybe a little bit of rawness there. And it'd just be interesting to see which players really step up and take the ball by the horn in regards to leading by example and sort of improving their relevant departments. But I wouldn't be taking too much from this first game. I think we'll see how they go on over the next month or so and see where they stand after that. I think they've just come up against very good opposition on the first half.
Moving on to the next fixture, probably one that we don't need to speak about too much. Yeovil Town versus Hartlepool United. I have a feeling these two, wherever they finish, are going to be very close to each other within the division this season when it comes to the end of season. table and how it'll look. I think a lot of people expected this to be quite low scoring. Yeovil defensively last season very strong. They've been able to retain that. Hartlepool themselves, I don't think particularly have ever been known to leak loads of goals. And on the forward front, I just think they've been able to cancel each other out with the defences that they've got. I think Yeovil this season will be better going forward. However, like I said, I just think this has been a game where they've been able to cancel each other out. Of course, John coming in, who's for Hartlepool, he's left York, and the lad, I'm not going to even try to pronounce his name. You can see it there. He's on loan from Bromley, someone for me who I think when I saw Hartlepool's business, I kind of looked at that and went, oh, that's quite an interesting one. And then, of course, Alex Reid going forward, not able to get off to the best start with him not scoring. But I think particularly for Hartlepool, it's a good point. And for Yeovil, it'd be a little bit disappointing, but there isn't really too much to talk about with this game. Yeah, what's your thoughts overall?
Yeah, I'm similar to you. Two sides I think could be there and thereabout with regards to top half finish, maybe a loose playoff push. I'm not ready to go too big on either team just yet. I really like what Hartlepool have done in terms of the business, the quality of the 11. I think they probably still need a forward. Someone to complement Johnson and Reid a little bit more, but both of them had their opportunities here and just they couldn't make it work. Francis was also quite lively too. I hold a special place in my heart for Reece McNally, who is someone I've known since he was a young lad, and delighted he's got the move that he's got. And I believe he was named in the National League Team of the Week, so brilliant start for him. And it's part of a back five that I think a lot of teams in the division will quite fancy having as their own, really. Nice mix of speed, power, directness, all able to defend. My only thing with Hartlepool is probably just one, scale of change early doors, and two, Simon Grayson hasn't finished a job in England for a long time, and it would just be interesting to see how that works with regards to whether he's still got that bit between his teeth and maybe that what sort of drove him to win the promotions at as he did with Blackpool, Leeds, and everyone else in League One. With Yeovil, I think Cooper maybe hit the nail on the head. He said last year would have lost that game. It's better to get a point than nothing, and also mention the impetus of his forwards late on, which they brought on Ben Woodsker as a young lad from Blues, someone who caught me eye in pre-season. Junior Marias and Tavon Campbell, who are known quantities at this level. You've got Aaron Jarvis. James Daly is a player I really like from his Aldershot days. So I think Yeovil look okay. I think it's just going to be, again, new ownership. And it still feels like there's maybe some wounds still there with Cooper and the fan base. Cooper also likes to chop and change a little bit as well with regards to his squad. Players sort of tend to fall in and out of favour and so on. So I'm just interested to see how that goes. I'd like to think a more settled Yeovil will be a more united Yeovil, and if they're a bit more united, then I think we won't see the same issues they had last year where they just, dropped down the table towards the end of the season. I think they've got a chance of having a decent season. I really like the signing of Jed Ward as well. I'm really surprised he's back in the National League.
Junior Marias as well, being able to come on from the bench for me. Didn't really hit it off when he previously, was it work? Yeah, he went on loan to Working, didn't he, at the back end of last season. Potentially in this side, I think he offers something different. Campbell, Marias and Jarvis for me, one of them's going to be able to score enough goals, get into double digits at least this season. If not two of them, I think all three are capable of being able to. So I think going forward, I'm not too concerned. Of course, neither of them started, and I think in the future, potentially, one of them will probably play on the side with Jarvis. Didn't really too much more you can really say about this game. I think we'll see more of these clubs in the upcoming weeks and being able to judge them. But moving on to the final fixture, surprise of the game week, maybe. I still think it's the Braintree Halifax game for me overall. But York dropping points against a Sutton side who a lot of people quietly feel that they could be onto something this season. As for York, not the best of starts. There's a few things I want to pick out from this side. I think the team selection you've got to look at, particularly the positioning of players. Felix, to me, I always think he's better, in that fullback position than playing him there. For me, overall, Boateng and Felix, it feels like needs someone else in there, and I don't think Banks particularly. I'd probably have him deeper, if that makes sense. Overall, for me, I'd rather have him in that position and someone else in the attacking midfield position. But no, look at this side. I think the main key is the fact that although they got 96 points last season, York, they've felt the need to bring in a large amount of new players, and I think was it 7? You've got Boateng, Newby, Palmer, Kitchen, and Banks of 5, I should say. 5 new players have been brought into the starting 11, and of course Joe Gray came off the bench as well. He replaced Sinclair. So at one point they had 6 new players on the pitch. Yeah, it doesn't really sit right with me overall. You look at the likes of Hunt on the bench, I'd have definitely started him in this match. Yeah, what's your thoughts overall?
Yeah, the thing that caught me off guard most, I know they're top players at the level, but given the way York play, was seeing Howe and Palmer starting at centre-back. I think there's one moment, I think it might actually be for the Sutton's first goal, where Nadesan there's one ball over the top and Nadesan just burns Palmer. And then Ogbonna scores at the back post. And I suppose in isolation, I haven't watched the full game. Just that's one isolated moment, but it just surprised me that both of them are in the side together. Fagan Walcott sort of been shifted out to right back, and I know he can play there. But the one thing I'm weary of doing is doubting Hinshelwood. He plays a lot of strange formations on paper that seem to work quite often. Maybe he overthinks it at times, but it's hard not to look at the starting 11 and think there's just serious quality there, and it feels like they are going to be the side to beat this year. Feels like if you manage to beat York City, if you finish above York City, the chances are you've probably won automatic promotion back to the or into the EFL. And even this game here, the report I received from a Sutton fan was just I got absolutely battered and come away with a draw. And already, if that's what's happening already, regardless of whether we agree maybe with the positioning of players or whether we think one or two maybe could step into the side, they're creating chances. They've already scored 2 goals. And to be fair, Sutton United are a dangerous side. You've just referenced it there. I think a few people have got them as dark horse this year, and Sutton are a decent side. They really are. They've got a real opportunity this season. I'm looking forward to see how they get on.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think I've got them 8th. And to be honest, when you pretty much got them 8th, they could easily finish higher as well. I was struggling with me 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and I think even me 10th on where to put them in positions. And it's opening game week. And like you said, when you've got a lot of new players coming into the side, it's going to take time for them to adjust, no matter the level and ability of them. And I think over time, you keep that lineup, they're going to win more games and they're going to win most games, to be honest. But it just does feel like opening game week. Why so many new players? Shouldn't you, over time, for me, embed them in? You've got lots of Hunt on the bench. And my concern for York is, I think they'll win the league. But if I'm looking at the concerns, squad morale overall, if you're Hunt on the bench, you've been brought out the side, you started the majority of the games last season, how are you going to feel? You've mentioned there the centre-back pairing, the lack of pace particularly. I see them, this might be an injustice, but I think they're both quite no-nonsense centre-halves as well. I don't know if you'd agree with that. I know you look at Palmer, he played in a footballing Chesterfield side. I've just always felt he's a bit of more of a no-nonsense centre-half. I just think overall for me, there's certain things that I'm not too keen on overall, in my opinion, in this one. Of course, they missed the penalty as well, Pierce. He scored one, missed the other one. It's a good Sutton side, like you said, a dark horse. You've got quality going forward, but I've seen a few York fans criticise them, and to be fair, I think it's rightfully so. I think Hinchelwood for this match, I think there's got to reflect on it, and I think other players probably will come back into the side for the next fixture. But like you mentioned, you look on paper at that quality, and it should be more than enough to win this league. But there's just a few little teething problems for me overall. It may take time. Anything finally to say on that one?
Yeah, I think when you look at last season, York had some teething problems early doors. I think it's just a case of it's a strange sort of thing to put forward. Obviously, when you look at the squad on paper, there's so much depth and so much quality in the starting 11. And sometimes you can almost have too many riches. And it'll just be interesting to see how Hinchelwood sort of moves forward in terms of deciding what his best 11 sort of looks like and maybe what the right balance is moving forward. I'd imagine it's just a case of, it's game week 1. He's had him for pre-season. He's decided that's the starting 11 he wants to go with. It's a competitive game, and then you sort of look at it afterwards and go, okay, maybe that didn't work. Let's, try and shift this, move this here. And it's just a case of moving the parts and seeing what sticks. And some players will fall out of favour. Some players will really take it on. My big worry with York last season was just, as I've sort of put in my preview, they had, I think what cost them in the end was they had a 22-game spell sort of through the winter months. They conceded 2 or more in 10 of those and lost 8 of them. Lost 7 of them and drew 1. Mm-hmm. And that was probably the difference between them winning the league and finishing second. And I think, when you're starting the season conceding 2 in the first game and 2 pretty bad goals, really. The first one is just, he's been done for pace, and the second one, it's a long throw and just people have just left the bodies in the box. But it's opening day, so I don't think there's too much to get too worried about. And again, I realise I've said this quite a few times already, but let's see how we get on over the next month. Let's see how it unfolds, and might be sitting here in a month's time where York have drawn 1, won 4, and we go, all right, fair enough. Like Hinchelwood knows what he's doing. He's found the right balance. Maybe someone's dropped out, someone's come in, and they hit fire.
100%. I think that more or less wraps up the actual predictions overall. Not the predictions, the actual game week review, I should say, overall. All fixtures have been reviewed. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you are new to the podcast, if potentially you're a Carlisle fan or a Truro fan, or Boreham or Scunthorpe or Brackley fan, and you're new to the division, this is the place for National League content. I've been Luke Walsh, and I've been joined by Ryan Deeney. Ryan, firstly, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I do really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Please remember to check out our sponsors, Cards Accepted. There's a link in the description for you to do that. You'll get 50% off your card machine. No contracts or monthly fees. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.